for Calgary fans, when because the Calgary is still in the infancy of this rebuild, I would say that they did a
Is it
lot
a
of the tear.
rebuild? I was wondering about that. Like, is this a rebuild or is it more of a retool on the fly?
So they will call it a retool, because they do not ever like to use the word rebuild. The
The
former
no-no word
president
in
now,
Canada. Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
former president of the team once said rebuild. We don't even know what that word means around here. But I think that they have kept a few veteran players around, like a Backlund and a Coleman and a Kadri. They have kept Huberto around, but I don't know if that necessarily is by design or by choice. I think they just
They'll
kind of
say it's
have
by
to.
choice at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
But for the Flames, I do think this is a rebuild. I think if they were looking to retool the moves that they made with Hanifin and Tanev and all the guys like Lindholm, Zadorov, all of that, I think those would have been for guys who are a little bit closer to NHL rosters than they were. And so I think with their words, they will always out here tell you, no, we're competing for a playoff spot. We want to do this thing. We really want to go for it. We feel like just get in. I mean, you saw 2004. We just got in and made our way to the Stanley
That
Cup
was the
final.
best. I was just thinking that was one of the most enjoyable playoff series I've ever watched. Remember when Vincent Lecavalier went at it with Jerome McGinley?
Oh,
Like that was
unbelievable.
dude, that
Yeah.
was the best. And everyone in Canada, it was one of the legit times where everyone was cheering for the Flames. Now, this is pre like social media, so not
Yeah.
everyone was a pizza cutter, all edge and no point. But like everyone was cheering for the Flames, and it was like pure. It was, I don't know, that was the best. I'm just thinking of it now. I remember I think I was 18 years old during that series, or maybe actually I was a little bit older now that I think about it, but still, that was a fantastic series to watch.
Yeah. It was, and the Aginla Lecavalier fight should be a statue outside of the new arena when it's
Yeah,
completed
and what
in a
was it? It
couple
was
of years here.
Conroy, Le Cavalier, or sorry, Conroy, who and not Letowski. Who was the third guy on that line with the Ginla and Conroy? It was
Oh, gee, who did play with him? Saprikin had a couple of good moments, but I don't think Jelena had
Damon
some big
Langkow
moments.
or something. Is that possible?
Langkow was
Like,
after. Langkow
okay.
came in
Either way, they had
afterward,
a
but yeah.
fantastic line, and that was some good hockey right there. That when I
Yeah.
think about a playoff series, I think about the Vincent Le Cavalier versus Ginla series. That was just
Yeah.
two captains going at
Oh,
it,
it was
right?
it was
Beautiful.
incredible. But for the organization, they then saw they didn't see miraculous run led by guy who, and I know where I'm saying this, but maybe should have won a Hart Trophy.
Nope,
And
nope. It's funny because like Montreal writers just straight up left them off ballots.
Yes.
Like,
Oh, we're aware.
But
Yeah.
I can't talk about Montreal voting with the because they get very very upset when we point out their terrible decisions.
Okay, well, far be it from me then to point out that Jerome McGinley should have absolutely won that MVP. But you have
God,
him.
yeah.
You have Mika Kiprasov, who was playing the best goaltending anyone in this organization has ever played at that point. They took that as, oh, we just have to get into the playoffs, and who knows, something like that could happen. And so just get into the playoffs has always been the mantra, which leads to Calgary Flames greats, Tony Amonte and Owen Nolan and Troy Brouwer and all of those sorts of guys. And so now they have finally gone with the actual, like with their actions, they are showing they are going with a rebuild route. And so that is why I think you see like Bruce Davidge get traded for and all of those instead of like actual NHL players. As we go into this part of the rebuild now for the Flames, where the teardown, there might be a couple of moves, but the tearing down has mostly wrapped up. Looking at what the Habs have done well and maybe not as well, what are kind of some lessons that Calgary could take from a Montreal rebuild?
Well, I think the biggest one, and it's not necessarily Montreal. Well, first of all, don't trade your first round pick to the Habs if you're going to be doing a rebuild. Like that's like trust me, every Habs fan is cheering for the Flames to finish 11th this year, right? Because that's at best. If it's a top 10 Habs fans, you don't get that pick, but you'll get it the next. I think it's automatic the next year, right? Is that
I believe
that trade?
so.
Like it's like a scroll, like Aladdin style. You have to get the dust off of it. And
yeah,
anyways.
I think it's actually why the guys at Cap Friendly wanted to sell. Like, we don't want these conditions on our site. Just get that thing away from us. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Kent Hughes has, man, he's got some beautiful lawyering going on with his contracts. And it's funny because I look around the league, for example, Darnell Nurse, you look at his contract, that's a Kent Hughes that got him that contract. So Flames fans, if you want to have some fun here, you should also cheer for Hughes because he's one of the reasons that the defense in Edmonton isn't as good as it should be. I'd say the best example isn't from Montreal, Peter. I think it's from Calgary, or not Calgary, is Buffalo and Ottawa and Detroit. Don't press fast forward. You can't press fast forward. This idea of making it into the playoffs, listen, the Habs did it, right? They got to the Stanley Cup final. I know it was the COVID year, but that was great memories, fantastic story, but that was it. That was like they knew that you can't really build on that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Marc Bergevin panicked. Everything went wrong in about 3 minutes in the offseason. But I think the biggest lesson is you can't fast forward it. And even if you have an arena that you have to fill up that's brand new coming up, which is part of the reason, right, that they're saying this,
Yeah.
you still have to take it slow and steady, and that's so difficult to do in Canada. Like we also have to take risks as well, right? So it's that balance. And in Canada, I feel every GM or for a while was in the running for the safest GM award.
Yeah.
But like that gives you nothing. Yay, I didn't spend my assets. I didn't, for example, like Edmonton was so proud they didn't spend a third round pick to improve their goaltending. Guys, like that third round pick could have got you a Stanley Cup,
Yeah.
like you're being a little ridiculous. So I feel like it's that balance between avoiding risk entirely and pressing fast forward. You really just have to play the hand you are dealt, and you just can't force it. You just can't force it. That's the issue. But once in a while, you have to go, right? So it's that balance between not ruining everything by trying to have a little success today, but also if you want to take a ride to the riverboat, you got to go down by the river. So once you're ready, I think that's when you go for it. And
Yeah.
I know it's Vegas. Everyone's going to say it's different, but man, what they did was very smart every year. I get it. They didn't have the bad contracts, but loading up on like bringing in high end guys that you allowed other teams like the Senators to develop, to draft, to take all that time. Once they're ready to go, you pick them up for, again, what was Mark Stone traded for?
It was
Like
Brandstrom and
like
there
half
was
a Skittles
first.
bag.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like that's ridiculous to me because you have a guy Mark Stone who's probably the best guy that forced giveaways in the history of the league or forced turnovers, and you got him for nothing, right? So you have to find that balance. But once you're ready to go, that's when you really have to commit. And I feel like that's where Canadian GMs as well they get right up to that line and they almost want to have that award for not taking any risks. But the biggest risk is often avoiding all risk. So that's the
Yeah.
that's the balance I feel like they have to find. But the Habs aren't there yet. Like they're not I don't know if the Flames should follow them, but I would follow. Carolina is probably the best example, but man, it's been 8 years we've been expecting them to go, eh?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like you get past a certain level, it's okay, it's onward and upward. And now Carolina had maybe the best roster in the league for a couple of years there.
Yeah.
And it was bad loss after bad loss after bad loss. Like there's a reason they carve your name into the trophy at the end of it. Like it's really hard to get that thing. And so you can do all these things perfectly. Like look, the Rangers have so much talent and it hasn't really clicked. And honestly, like far be it from us to say nice things about the Toronto Maple Leafs. A lot of talent on that Toronto Maple Leafs team for a very long time, and they
I
had
would have
trouble winning
reloaded
games.
every year. If I'm the Leafs, I would have honestly just reloaded every year. And I know they hated that, but it's like, man, after 10 shots, you'll get your cup because, hey, man, it took Ovechkin 10 shots, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. And so the one that I look at, and now they're going to catch a stray in this for no reason, but the Edmonton Oilers, you look at the first round picks that they've had over the last little bit. A, none of them hit. B, why are you using so many of them?
Like, you don't need for them to hit at that point, right?
No.
Because it's 4 years away. Like,
yeah, if you are a team in contention for a Stanley Cup, and I would suggest if you have Connor McDavid, you are, then I don't even send my scouts to look at potential first round picks. No, I'm sending those things out every single year. And with Tampa Bay, like everyone got on them for all of those ridiculous trades where it's, oh yeah, 8 first round picks for Tanner
The window
Jeannot.
was open. They went for it.
Yeah, banners fly forever, man. And so when you are in that spot, go for it. And when you are not, it is. I don't fully go with the anything not nailed to the ground you send out, because I do think having a Backlund there for a Coronado is good. Having a Kadri there who helped Pospisil and Zari last year is good. But there are sometimes, like Kuzmenko and Mantha are the ones who get a lot of the attention here this year. Those guys, yeah, 4th round pick would be fine, or something along those lines, right? Like there are a certain level of guys that you trade, but there are a couple of veterans you need to keep. But when it is go time, I'm with you. It is like full throttle. Let's go.
I mean, okay, so the Oilers drafted a goalie called Emil Vinny in the 2nd round that will, listen, good luck to him. Will never play in the NHL. He will never see the ice here. He will make absolutely any impact. And they could have had someone that gave him a better chance to win the Stanley Cup. Like and I'm actually talking about Jake Allen. That's actually the trade that they had been looking at. And that's a crime, man, to waste McDavid. I know I'm going way, but and Draisaitl, that is an absolute crime. It's a sin in hockey to waste them, because this was a basketball team, Peter. You know that they would have traded, like, okay, every single draft pick from now to eternity for the following players, right?
Yeah.
Like they would go for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really in Canada, we really fear risk to the point that it becomes a risk, if that makes any sense.
Totally.